Hey guys, welcome to week 3 of Yaks Online. It's been another fun week, and hopefully everyone is still surviving. Hopefully everyone's still healthy. Been an interesting week here in Arizona. As most of you probably have heard already, Governor Ducey is really trying to crack down on the quarantining. Make sure you stay home unless what you're doing is a necessity. So hopefully everybody's being smart about that. I know we've been having some of the young adults over to our house the last couple Friday nights, just give you a chance to get away, play some games, things like that. But we canceled that this last week. Again, just respecting Governor Ducey's announcement and the guidance that he's giving us. So hopefully you're being smart, be wise. I know it's frustrating, I know it's annoying, but the sooner we get this thing knocked out, the sooner we can get back to our normal routines. So just ask you that you do continue to respect the government, the authority that God has put into place. So we'll be back with each other here soon, hopefully getting into May, and we'll go from there. I know for me, my hair my barbershop is closed. So in the next couple of weeks, you might start seeing some funky hairstyles from me. Cameron did offer to cut my hair for me, and that's just not going to happen. So a little bit nervous about what that might look like. Anyway, hopefully you're doing well, and yeah, we'll get back to normalcy here soon. So last week we talked about boundaries and our families, and I feel like I crammed a lot into about a 35-minute video, which is a little bit longer than I wanted anyway. So what I'm going to do this week is we're going to break up this lesson. It's boundaries and your friendships. We're going to break it up into a couple of weeks. I want to make sure we cover all the specifics, all the details. Don't want to leave anything out, and I also encourage you, if you have any questions at all, as I'm talking, as you're listening, write down questions. If you have the book and you've read this chapter, don't hesitate to reach out. You can call the office again, the church office, get my phone number, get my email address. Not a problem. If you want to talk about any of these things, run things by me, start talking about how you can set effective boundaries in your life, in your relationships. I'm wide open to having those conversations with anybody that needs it, even if you're not in our Yaks group. Maybe you're a member of the church and you're just watching it and you've never really thought about these different boundaries, but you're interested in learning more. Give me a call. I have absolutely no problem with that. If you're watching from anywhere else around the country, you're not even a member of our church, that's fine. If you've got questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I want to be an encouragement to anyone and everyone that's watching this video. So let's go ahead and have a word of prayer, and then we'll jump into our lesson for today. Father, we love you. And again, just so thankful for the guidance that you give us through your word, and the wisdom that you try to bestow on us with how to pick the right friends and make sure that the friends we do have, that the relationships are wholesome for us, and that there's no bitterness, no resentment, no discouragement that's happening as a result of these friendships. Just thank you so much for that. And Father, I know there's going to be people watching who are in bad relationships with friends right now. Father, I've been in relationships like that where you have to set boundaries and make sure the relationship is in a spot where it's beneficial for both sides, but most importantly, that it's centered around you. And God, I pray that you will give me wisdom, clarity of thought as I'm sharing some of these ideas. And Father, just open up the hearts and minds of those watching this video. And Father, pray that they will be able to take something away, shed some light on areas that maybe they need boundaries set or boundaries moved, or maybe they're trying to set boundaries on other people. Again, just give us wisdom, give us direction in each of these areas. We love you. You know, we pray. Amen. All right. So like I said, boundaries and your friends. Another big group that's probably a part of your life right now, a very important part of your life right now. And Genesis 2:18, I'll start with this verse, Genesis 2, verse 18. And the Lord God said, "It is not good that a man should be alone. I will make him and help me for him." And most of us probably know this is talking about Adam and Eve. God created Adam, and God said it's not good that Adam's alone. So he gave him Eve. Obviously, this is dealing with the marriage relationship, that specific verse. But the point is, God doesn't want us to be alone. God said it is not good that we're alone. He gave us a need to have friends. It's not wrong to have friends. It's not wrong to crave more friends, better friends. That's a need that God has given us. So first off, I encourage you, hopefully you're not the type who thinks you don't need friends. That is definitely not the case. Everybody needs somebody that they can talk to, that they can hang out with, that they can have fun with, that they can run things by. So hopefully you're not outside of this quarantine period. Hopefully you're not living that hermit lifestyle and thinking you don't need anybody else in your life, because that's just not true. God says we need people, so it's a need that He's given us. The Bible's full of verses that talk about friendship, that talk about these relationships that we have. A couple of verses that I'll bring up right now, just right off the bat. Proverbs 13:20 says, "He that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed." Friends are so important in your life. The right friends are key. I've got several friends in my life that have played a vital role all the way back to high school. I've got two friends that to this day I still consider pretty good friends. In college, I made a couple other friends as well who I still consider friends. As a guy, we don't talk to each other that often. My wife talks to her best friend almost on a day-to-day basis. She has a couple friends that she talks to every week. I don't necessarily need that, but I still have good friends in my life. We still need to talk. We still need to run things by each other. But I was privileged to have good friends. They had good impact in my life. They love the Lord. They make right choices. I don't remember a time in my life in high school and going through college where a friend said, "Hey, let's go do this." And I knew it was wrong. I knew it was something that I wasn't supposed to do. Maybe little things that, my parents said don't go to a movie, and I went to a movie with a friend. I'll be honest, I did do things like that, but I was never tempted to do drugs. I was never tempted to drink, smoke. Never went places that I knew I shouldn't be going, that were inherently bad, things like that. So, but I know people who made friends with the wrong people, and it changed their life. To this day, I feel like I've led a very clean lifestyle, and I know quite a few people, as a result of the friends that they chose, have gone to a different path. And I highly encourage you, take a look at the friendships that you have. Are they helping you draw closer to God? Are they encouraging you when it comes to spiritual matters? Are they encouraging you in the Lord? Or do they encourage you to do things that you know you're not supposed to be doing, that you know are a direct violation of God's standards? Really take a look and consider that. This verse says, "He that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed." The wrong friends will destroy your life. It's that simple. Make sure you've got wise friends. Another couple of verses here, Proverbs 22, verses 24 and 25. "Make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go, lest thou learn his ways and get a snare to thy soul." Again, this verse talking specifically about an angry man, a furious man. I would apply it in general. Anybody who has bad habits, anybody who's going to have a bad influence in your life, they will pull you into their ways. I know so many people who say, "I hang out with these guys and I witness to them and I talk to them, and I'm going to bring them to Christianity. I'm going to bring them to church. I'm going to draw them closer to God." And yes, it's possible. But so many times, the vast majority of the time, they're going to pull you into their sinful ways rather than you pulling them into your godly ways. Be careful, be wise with who you're hanging out with. So getting into, again, these boundaries, as we started last week, I want to talk about different types of relationships. And when we first started getting into this book, we talked about different types of people and different types of personalities. And this chapter, it starts with different dynamics of friendships. So we're taking four different types of personalities and comparing them, how they interact with each other. The first friendship type that it talks about is compliant. A compliant, friends with a compliant. And a compliant, for those of you who weren't in our class several weeks ago, basically a compliant is the one who you're going to do everything you can to keep the peace. You're not going to tell people no because you don't want that relationship to be gone. You don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. You don't want to get anybody angry. So you're basically a yes man. And this one is one I relate with very well. All growing up, I was a compliant. I was a yes man. There were people in my life that definitely were more dominant. There were others who were also compliants as well. And I learned compliance with compliance can definitely be a good thing. There's going to be a lot of fun in that relationship. You can have a lot of good interaction, but there are certainly times, situations that come up where you can't make a decision. You can't come to a conclusion. What are we going to do? I don't know. I want to do this. Okay, let's do that. The fact is you both want to do something else, but somebody threw one out, so you both went with it. Eventually, resentment can set in because of a relationship like that. Don't always just give in to each other. Again, situations are going to come up where you end up doing something you don't want to do, and that resentment will start creeping in, and you start becoming dissatisfied. You get that sense that you allowed something that you shouldn't have. Be very careful of that. If you're in a relationship where that happens, where you're dissatisfied because you did something that you know you shouldn't have done, there's a boundary problem with that. The root cause for this type of boundary, you maybe probably grew up avoiding saying no just to keep others happy, like we already said. It's easy to fall into. I'm a middle child, and I think it's very easy for middle children to do that. Again, I know it's not a 100% statement, but I've met a lot of middle children, and it's easy for us to be that compliant type. Older sibling gets what they want. They drive so much. Younger sibling, baby of the family. I'll be nice as I got a little sister. I don't know if she's going to watch this or not, so I won't say anything too negative with that. But yeah, the fact is it's easy for the middle child to be very compliant with things and just go with the flow. You don't want to cause disruption. You don't want to cause issues. So this is one that I definitely fell in for a long time. And over the last 10, 15 years, I feel like I'm really growing out of it and setting the right boundaries that need to be in place. But this is where I'm at, just being completely honest with you. Conflicts that come up. The compliants deny their own boundaries simply to keep the peace. And what needs to happen is you've got to take ownership. You have to take ownership of your boundaries. Take ownership of what you're doing. Don't let other people control that. If your friend is another compliant and you guys just constantly are saying yes to each other, yes to each other, yes to each other, at some point in time, you've got to set boundaries. You've got to make sure you're being honest with each other, be open with each other. Start that conversation of, hey, we're always doing these things. We don't really fight. Is there anything that maybe you don't tell me because you don't want me to get upset? And vice versa. If you've got something that really does bother you about somebody else, be open with them, be honest with them. You're doing both of yourselves a disservice by just holding that in and being compliant. Basically, what needs to happen in a situation like this, you need to plug into supportive relationships that will help you grow, that will help you learn to set your own boundaries. And again, we talked about that last week. If you don't know how to set boundaries, if you've never set boundaries on your own, if you don't know how to set boundaries, come join our Yaks group. If you're in town, if you're local, if you're not, find somebody that you can really plug into that will help you and hold you accountable when it comes to setting these boundaries. So those are compliance. Basically, my own words, it's a yes man. Don't be a yes man. There's a time and place for it, but more often than not, you're going to end up getting hurt. So the next type of relationship that the book talks about is the compliant and the aggressive controller. Basically, the compliant gives in to most things. The aggressive controller usually feels pestered because the compliant's just always kind of nagging them. Hey, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And the aggressive controller is the type that's just going to take. I want this. Let's do that. Let's do this. And the compliant's just going to go with it. Ultimately, the compliant's going to, again, get hurt because they're going to end up doing things that they don't necessarily want to do. And the aggressive controller is just, the compliant is reinforcing the bad habit of, let's just give them what they want. Even if it's not right, we're going to give them what they want. We're going to let them, we're going to enforce that bad behavior. So again, another boundary problem with both sides in this relationship. So the route to the aggressive controller. The aggressive controller probably never received proper training in delaying their own gratification and taking responsibility for their own actions in a lot of cases. And the conflict that comes up, as we already said, the compliant doesn't set limits The aggressive controller doesn't respect limits if they are set. Even if the compliant tries to put a boundary in place, the aggressive controller is just going to roll right over that, tear that boundary down, and that's just what they've always done. That's what they're going to keep doing until the compliant stands up and says, no, this isn't okay. Both sides, again, need to take responsibility for setting boundaries and then respecting those boundaries. The compliant needs to practice setting boundaries. The aggressive controller needs someone to be honest with them from loving friends. And again, the compliant has to learn to be open, to be honest, and just tell the truth. Not worrying about what might happen to this friend. I might hurt their feelings. They might not talk to me for a day. They might not talk to me for a week. That's how compliants think of things. And the aggressive controllers are sitting out watching this video saying, yeah, I don't get that. I don't understand that. How can anybody be that way? I can say from my standpoint, it's very easy for a lot of people to be that way. Compliants are thinking, man, how can somebody be that aggressive? How can somebody be that controlling? It's just, that's how God made us. God gave us these personalities. God made us the way we are, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we have to learn how to live within the way God made us. We have to learn to set boundaries, set limits, whatever our personality might be like. So that's another area of potential conflict. So how to set boundaries in this type of relationship? Again, the compliant must apply biblical principles to friendship. And Matthew 18 is a great chapter, a great passage of scripture that talks about friendship. So I would highly recommend read Matthew 18 and get those guidelines. But as a compliant, once again, you've got to be honest. You've got to step forward and say, hey, this isn't right. I can't let you continue to control me the way you have been. You've got to be firm. If actions don't change, the compliant must leave that relationship at least temporarily. And that's hard. That's the last thing that compliants want to do. The last thing, again, that I want to do is hurt somebody's feelings. And that makes me think, okay, our friendship is over. To this day, I don't like it. I don't like hurting somebody's feelings. I have a hard time saying no to people because I don't want them to think, man, that Brian guy, he's a jerk. He didn't give me what I want. He didn't say yes. But the fact is, you can't say yes to everybody. You can't give everybody what they want. You can't make everybody happy. Set your boundaries. As an aggressive controller, if you know you're this way, and that's one thing I have a lot of respect for, this type of personality. You know it. You know who you are. You know you can be aggressive. And more often than not, you own it. You have no problem saying, yep, that's me. And that's something that I have a lot of respect for. Again, that's something I struggle with all growing up. But that's neither here nor there. The fact is, aggressive controller, understand what you might be doing to the compliant friends that you have. You're not making the relationship mutually beneficial. And in the long run, that's going to hurt both of you. When both sides are ready to move forward, friendship can then commence. So if the compliant is firm and putting a boundary in place, and you say, hey, I can't do things with you until we're both in a better spot, hopefully the aggressive controller will realize, you know what, I need to change some things. And the compliant is taking that first step, doing what they need to do. The aggressive controller, again, respect the boundary. Self-reflect on who you are. Are you handling that friendship the way God wants you to handle that friendship? Are you handling it in a biblical way? If not, pray about it. Get some counsel. You know, how can you change and make things better for you so that it'll help your friendships over here as well? So that's the aggressive controller. So the next relationship it talks about is the compliant and the manipulative controller. And a little bit different from the aggressive controller. The aggressive controller is basically one who they want their way. That A-type personality. I'm going to go get what I want and nobody's going to stop me. The manipulative controller is definitely different. They're trying to control things, but they're using their circumstances in a way to get what they want. And I really feel like we see this a lot in ministry. When it comes to your ministry, helping out in the church, you know what, I've got this going on over here, so I really need you, my friend, to help me out in this area. Can you watch my kid because I've got this activity, I've got to do this over here. And it's not bad intentions, but you're taking advantage of your friendships. And again, the compliant is going to say yes. They're going to say yes. If you need help, yes, let me help you. Let me do whatever I can. But the more and more that you take advantage of that friendship, the more resentment is setting in with the compliant. And the compliant is, if they don't have the right boundaries in place, they're going to keep saying yes. And that resentment's going to build, going to build, going to build, going to build. And again, it takes both sides to realize the problem. But if you are that manipulative controller, again, you know the situation. You know if you're constantly having to ask one friend especially, but maybe it's multiple friends, you know what that is. You know what you're doing. You know if you don't have control of your schedule, if things are constantly popping up because you don't write things down, or you forget, or you don't have the proper tools into place to manage your schedule, those are boundary problems. And like I said, with this boundary, once again, resentment's going to set in. The compliant is going to get tired of doing because you can't control things on your end. The root cause of something like this, the manipulative controller. This person probably never had to answer for mistakes that they made or suffer the consequences when things come up. If again, you have a schedule conflict, you didn't plan ahead, people are bailing you out constantly because you ask them and they want to help out, but it's not helping you learn. It's not helping you manage your own day-to-day functions. So that's kind of where the typical root cause comes in with the manipulative controller. So the conflict that'll arise from this, it's a lack of preparation, usually, and it needs to be, and you need to be bailed out. Like I said, maybe it's one person that you always go to. Maybe one person who's constantly babysitting for you because something comes up. Maybe it's multiple people. Maybe you have a circle of friends and that need is spread out over 3, 4, 5 friends. Maybe it's 10 friends. The fact is, you're hurting people because you don't have control of your life. And you've got to step forward and take ownership of that. The manipulative controller needs to stop feeling like a victim of their circumstances. You need to take ownership and understanding, okay, these problems that come up, it's my fault because I didn't plan accordingly. I committed to too many things. I'm spreading myself too thin. Whatever it is, take ownership of that. Understand this is the conflict root, and I need to set boundaries in place over here so that I don't ruin the boundaries that are in place over on this side. Again, all of these boundaries coming up. And once you start setting these boundaries and understanding the need for boundaries and how to set them in relationships, it's going to get easier and easier and easier. And you will gain control in all aspects of your life just by setting the right boundaries. So the compliant, to deal with a situation like this, the compliant must be firm with your no. When that manipulative controller comes to you again saying, hey, I've got this going on, and can you watch my kid again? Can you do this? Can you help me out with this? Maybe it's a college student and you don't stay on top of your schoolwork, and you've got your roommate or somebody that's trying to bail you out. Hey, can you type up my paper? Can you do this for me? Can you do some work over here for me? Because I just, I don't have time. I want to do all this over here. And so this isn't the priority that it needs to be. Compliance, don't let that happen. Be firm, say no, and it's okay. Set your boundary. Your relationship will grow as a result of that. The manipulative controller simply must be more responsible for their schedule, for keeping track of things, for not letting different things pop up where you have to try to manipulate situations to get help. It's not right. Again, it's a boundary problem. If both sides are working towards that, if the controller takes control of their schedule, if the compliant will be firm and say, no, I'm done helping you, your friendship will grow as both sides will feel more respected through these things. So that's the third friendship type. And the last one that the book talks about, it's compliant and non-responsive. So again, we keep talking about the compliance, and maybe the friendship is something different. Usually an aggressive controller is not going to have boundary problems with a manipulative controller because they're both trying to control things. The friendship is either going to have a different dynamic altogether, or a lot of times you're probably not going to be friends to begin with because they both want to control everything. Hopefully you are setting the right boundaries and you can be friends with any of these types of people. Again, it comes back to the right boundaries. So the last one here is compliant and non-responsives. The compliant does all the action and the non-responsive does nothing. And I kind of look at that as a Mary and Martha relationship. If you remember in the Bible, Jesus is coming to Mary and Martha's house. And Martha is work, get everything ready. We got to feed them. We got to feed Jesus. We got to feed the disciples. We've got to have everything on point, ready to go. And Mary just sits at Jesus' feet and does nothing. She listens to Jesus. And again, it's a different dynamic than the relationship we're talking about as far as friendships go. But that's kind of what comes to mind when I'm talking about non-responsives versus the compliance. Martha wants to make everybody happy, and Mary's going to sit at Jesus' feet. So in this situation, the compliant feels like they're always working at the friendship, and the non-responsive just goes with it. The root cause, the compliant doesn't want to be abandoned, and we talked about that earlier. The need for every relationship to be on point, to be there when you want it, when you need it. And the non-responsive has never had to work at making friends. Maybe the non-responsive people work harder because they want you to be their friend for whatever reason. Just friends come naturally to you, and I know both sides. For me personally, I've never had a problem making friends, and part of it's probably because I am compliant and I give people a lot of times what they want. But there are a lot of people who they just, whether it be their last name, whether it be they come from money, and people want to be their friends because of that. Who knows? The fact is, there are people who have never had to work at a friendship. And that's kind of the root cause for this dynamic. So the conflict that comes out of a relationship like this, one takes on too much responsibility, usually the compliant, taking on more responsibility than they should. And the non-responsive doesn't take on enough responsibility. The compliant needs to set a boundary of not doing everything. The non-responsive needs to understand both sides have to work to make an effective relationship. And kind of an example of this would be, a friend, the compliant is calling, hey, let's go to a movie, let's go out to dinner, let's go to game night, let's go do this, let's do this activity, this function. And the non-responsive might go along with it. They may not ever call you back. They might just show up. You tell them what you want and they're just going to show up. And who knows, but one side is working harder in the relationship than the other. And that, again, causes boundary problems. If the non-responsive doesn't take action when the compliant tries, then maybe the relationship is not as good as the compliant thought it would be. If you are not benefiting from that friendship, again, the compliant, be honest. Be open with the non-responsive and say, hey, I try, I call, and you don't call me back. Or you call me 3 days later, and I'm trying to set something up for tomorrow, and you call me 3 days later to tell me it does or doesn't work, but that was 2 days ago. These situations happen on a regular basis. Don't be the compliant type that just keeps putting up with it. Set your boundary. Put it in place. Be firm and say, hey, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'll call you one time, and if you don't call me back, I'm assuming you're not interested. Eventually, the non-responsive will start missing their friend and will reach out to you, or else that's not a good friendship to have in the first place. So again, that's another type of dynamic as far as friendships go. And we could talk about so many more other relationships that are come into play through situations like this. But those are four that the book talks about, and they're very common. Again, for me being compliant, I can relate to most of these. Find some situations, whichever side you're on. If you're the compliant, if you're a non-responsive, if you're a manipulative controller, if you're an aggressive controller, again, self-reflect. Where do I fall into the equation in this thing? With my friendships, am I causing problems? Do I need to set boundaries on either side of this to make sure my friendships are as strong as they need to be? And if you do that, again, your friendships will grow closer to each other, and leverage that, hopefully, to draw closer to God through your friendships. So we're going to talk more next week about specific relationship dynamics with friends, and hopefully, again, you'll take some time this next week, consider the relationships that you're in now. where there might be boundary problems, and we'll go a little bit deeper next week in how to resolve some of these things. So let's go ahead and close in a word of prayer, and we'll pick things up again next week. Father, we again just so thankful for your love to us. Father, you tell us you want to be that friend that sticks closer to than a brother, and we just so grateful for that. You give us the perfect example of friendship, but Father, it goes so much deeper than that. We talked about last week that you've adopted us if we're saved into your family, but beyond that, you want to be a friend. You want to be that person that we go to whenever we have a need, whenever we have a question, whenever we need support. And Father, thank you for always being there for us, no matter what we're faced with, no matter what what's going through our minds. So many times we forget that. And Father, just help us to remember constantly, you're there for us. You want to be our friend. You want to take care of us. But Father, beyond that relationship with you, you've given us a need to have friendships in our lives. We need that as just human nature. We need friends. And Father, whatever the dynamic is in each one of our friend relationships, help us to really consider what the dynamics are at play in each of those relationships. Father, where are boundaries that either we need to set, or where are boundaries that maybe other people are trying to set with us, and we need to respect them. Father, give us wisdom, give us direction, and help us understand each of these areas at play, whichever side, again, of the relationship that we're on. We love you, and again, just look forward to a great week. Continue to provide health and safety to all those watching this video, all those that are part of the Maranatha family, and especially those that are within our YACS group. We love you, and you're going to pray. Amen. All right, so once again, thanks for joining us. This lesson has turned out to be over 30 minutes again, so yeah, one of these days I'm going to get a short lesson, I promise. And but thanks for taking the time, joining us. Hope you have a great week, and once again, God bless.